Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Saturday, 24th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Russia faced global law enforcement action and ongoing conflict. A Russian-led cybercrime network was dismantled in a global operation, leading to arrest warrants for 20 suspects, primarily in Russia, and the unsealing of indictments against 16 individuals. Domestically, Russia launched a large-scale, combined drone and missile attack on Kyiv, injuring 15 people with 14 ballistic missiles and 250 drones, though Ukrainian forces intercepted most. Amidst these hostilities, Russia and Ukraine engaged in a major prisoner swap. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced that Russia would present a draft document outlining conditions for a long-term peace accorded to Ukraine following the prisoner exchange. Lavrov also cast doubt on the Vatican as a potential venue for peace talks, despite Pope Leo's offer to mediate. Adding to international concerns, Russian intelligence services were discovered to have turned Brazil into an assembly line for deep-cover operatives. Ukraine endured a significant Russian attack on Kyiv. The large-scale combined drone and missile assault injured 15 people and damaged buildings, with 14 ballistic missiles and 250 drones involved. Ukrainian forces intercepted most of the incoming projectiles. Debris from the attacks fell in at least 4 districts of Kyiv. Amidst the conflict, Ukraine and Russia completed a major prisoner swap, the largest since the February 2022 invasion. Following the exchange, Russia announced plans to present a draft document outlining conditions for a long-term peace accord. Turning to the United States, President Trump announced a major prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine on the Truth Social platform, promising it would go into effect shortly. The U.S. also unsealed indictments against 16 individuals, mostly in Russia, connected to the Russian-led cybercrime network dismantled in the global operation. However, Europe has voiced frustration over President Trump's refusal to impose promised sanctions on Russia for rejecting a ceasefire in Ukraine, compounded by indications the U.S. may pursue a new economic partnership with Russia instead. Within the European Union, discussions are underway regarding new sanctions against Russia. Proposed measures include cutting 20 banks from SWIFT and lowering the G7 oil price cap to approximately $45. Paralleling concerns in the U.S., Europe is also frustrated by President Trump's reluctance to impose promised sanctions on Russia over its rejection of a ceasefire in Ukraine, and by signs the U.S. may focus on a new economic partnership with Russia instead. In Brazil, federal agents dismantled a Russian intelligence operation. The operation had transformed Brazil into an assembly line for deep-cover operatives. China faces increasing internet censorship, especially in Henan province, where users experience significantly restricted access. Online discontent is fueled by economic challenges, evidenced by public outrage over displays of wealth. China's internet watchdog is clamping down on false financial claims and stock touting, closing numerous social media accounts. Many young Chinese citizens are postponing retirement due to the slowing economy and demographic crisis. China has approved a major canal project to connect Jiangxi province with Zhejiang province, integrating inland economies with coastal regions. China has achieved a 600-kilometer error-free underwater communication using sound, potentially having military applications. Security technology expos showcase the latest products from tech companies vying for military and police contracts. Hong Kong remains critical for the internationalization of China's yuan. China is reacting strongly to new U.S. chip bans, expressing confidence in its long-term resilience. A study found an alarming rise in internet censorship. In China's Henan province, where users face far more restrictions than typical Chinese internet users. Turning to Singapore, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has emphasized the nation's commitment to honest engagement with both the US and China. He seeks to collaborate where interests align while safeguarding Singapore's security and sovereignty. China's Premier Li Qiang has congratulated Wong on his appointment, anticipating continued friendly relations. Singapore and China are commemorating 35 years of bilateral ties. In the United States, the Trump administration is considering altering restrictions on China's access to advanced semiconductors. Harvard University's connections to China have become a political vulnerability. The U.S., along with China and Russia, is seen as a key player in a proposed cooperative framework designed to preempt crises arising from China's alignment with Russia and North Korea. Former President Trump has threatened the EU with 50% tariffs and Apple with 25% tariffs. Internationally, China's alignment with Russia and North Korea is seen as creating a potentially destabilizing triangle. This prompts calls for a new cooperative framework involving the US, China, and Russia to proactively manage potential crises. Films from China, Brazil, Iran, and other countries were showcased at Cannes, highlighting the diversity of cinema beyond Hollywood. The United States faces scrutiny over allegations that the Trump administration sought to drop criminal charges against MS-13 leader Vladimir Antonio Arevalo Chavez for deportation to El Salvador, potentially as a favor to President Nayib Bukele, who allegedly had a deal with the gang. President Trump supports Nippon Steel's proposed partnership with US Steel, claiming it will create 70,000 jobs and contribute US $14 billion to the U.S. economy, though details remain vague. Some perceive the Trump administration as viewing US universities as a hotbed of liberals, according to Professor Charles Cuck. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, proposed ending greenhouse gas caps for coal and gas-fired power plants, arguing that eliminating these emissions would not significantly impact public health. The U.S. lifted its initial sanctions on Syria following President Trump's surprise announcement in May, preceding a meeting with Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara. A report indicates that President Trump's initiative to attract wealthy Chinese individuals to the U.S. with a gold card has failed. President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act and his threat to impose 50% tariffs on EU imports have unsettled the bond market and fostered investor skepticism. He also threatened Apple with 25% tariffs if iPhone assembly is not moved to the U.S., reiterating his demand for complete US manufacturing and criticizing their decision to increase iPhone production in India. In response, WHAM chief Maroš Šefčovič stated that any trade deal must be based on respect, not threats, and vowed to defend the EU's interests. The EU is facing difficulties securing a trade agreement with the US due to these tariff threats, which have stalled ongoing negotiations. Turning to China, Shenzhen's exports experienced a decline in April. Tron founder Justin Sun interprets President Trump's crypto dinner as a strong signal to the industry, suggesting that US actions regarding cryptocurrency will impact China. In France, 8 individuals were found guilty in Paris for the 2016 robbery of Kim Kardashian, during which $10 in jewelry was stolen. Israel's military operations in Gaza have intensified, resulting in at least 60 Palestinian deaths in a single day and prompting severe warnings from aid organizations about escalating malnutrition and famine. The UN Secretary-General has strongly criticized Israel's insufficient aid deliveries into Gaza, dismissing the amount as a teaspoon, despite claims of 300 trucks entering through the Kerem Shalom crossing. Reports further detailed the looting of 15 aid trucks within Gaza. Accusations have surfaced against the Israeli army for allegedly using Palestinians as human shields, a practice known as mosquito protocol, which Israel denies. Compounding tensions, Palestinians are protesting Israel's plan to construct a national park in Sebastia, viewing it as a tactic to displace them. Conflict's repercussions are felt globally, as evidenced by the ongoing debates and international responses. In the UK, prominent Labour figures are pushing for the government to formally recognize Palestinian statehood at an upcoming UN conference. Shifting focus to the United States, the shooting of Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C., perpetrated by Elias Rodriguez, who proclaimed "Free, Free Palestine," has been interpreted as a manifestation of an era of violent populism tied to the Gaza war and increasing political violence. Criticism of Israel's conduct in Gaza continues to be conflated with accusations of anti-Semitism. Turning to Lebanon, the nation is initiating measures to disarm Palestinian groups operating within its borders in the aftermath of the war with Israel. This initiative is seen as a potential precursor for disarming Hezbollah, fueled by broader anxieties regarding the influence of Iranian-backed militias in the region. Returning to the United States, clarifying earlier reporting, 2 employees of the Israeli embassy in Washington were involved in a shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, and a suspect has been charged with murder, not kill. Japan is currently navigating complex economic and social currents. Core inflation in Japan has reached a 2-year peak in April, influenced by rising rice prices, adding pressure on the central bank to contemplate further interest rate adjustments. Japan's Generation Z is increasingly embracing quiet quitting, prioritizing work-life balance over career advancement and higher compensation. Legislation aimed at enhancing Japanese pension benefits is on track for parliamentary approval, with backing from the ruling coalition incorporating an amendment from the CDP. In the realm of disaster preparedness, Japan is creating a public-private network to bolster collaboration among local governments, businesses, and nonprofits during emergencies. The nation also faces potential economic headwinds from possible U.S. tariffs, which could significantly affect thousands of small and mid-size auto parts manufacturers, including suppliers from major automakers like Toyota and Nissan. Japan aims to leverage its shipbuilding partnership with the U.S. to negotiate and avoid these tariffs. Chief Tariff Negotiator Ryosei Kazawa has engaged in discussions with U.S. officials, noting a growing acknowledgement of Japan's economic importance by the United States. Taiwan has lifted its age restriction on Japanese beef imports, which had been in place since the 2001 outbreak of mad cow disease. Popular culture is also influencing travel patterns, with some travelers avoiding Japan due to a viral comic book predicting a major earthquake. In July 2025, by Ryo Tatsuki, who some claim accurately predicted the 2011 earthquake. Hokkaido's newest hiking trail, the 410-kilometer Hokkaido East Trail, connects 3 national parks, offering access to untouched landscapes. Turning to the United States, President Donald Trump supports a partnership between U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel, indicating potential approval of the Japanese firm's $14 bid to acquire its U.S. rival, a move that has boosted U.S. Steel's share price. The U.S. and Japan are considering a potential tariff agreement during the upcoming J7 Leaders Summit in June. A judge has affirmed the president's authority to impose tariffs, referencing a historical lawsuit against the Nixon administration involving a Japanese zipper company. Elsewhere, a French studio's JRPG, Clair Obscur. Expedition 33 has been praised for innovating more in the genre than recent Japanese-developed titles. Lastly, Takuma Sato, from Japan, is participating in the Indianapolis 500 auto race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Ukraine and Russia recently executed a significant prisoner exchange, one of the largest since the onset of Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022, beginning with an initial swap of 390 prisoners on each side, with indications of further exchanges to come potentially involving a total of 1,000 prisoners. Hours after the first major exchange, Russia launched drone and missile attacks against Ukraine. Among those reunited was Elena Nehir with her husband, Alexander Nehir, a Ukrainian prisoner of war released from Russian captivity. In Kyiv, Nathan's famous hot dogs have found popularity, with Elisa Dombrovska preparing them at a Soka gas station. Ukraine's drone innovation is evident in Kyiv, where approximately 2 million unmanned aerial vehicles, WHAMs, are produced annually. Turning to the United Kingdom, employees average 1.8 days a week of remote working, surpassing the global average of 1.3 days, according to the Global Survey of Working Arrangements, (GSEPGAL). Former UK Civil Service head Simon Case anticipates the next 20 years will be defined by conflict between nations, prompting him to urge ministers to create new strategies for the UK's nuclear deterrent. Finally, displaced Chagos Islanders express concerns about the possibility of never returning to their homeland after the British government finalized an agreement to transfer the Chagos Islands sovereignty to Mauritius. Germany is facing a dual threat of critical infrastructure cyber attacks and a public safety crisis. A mass stabbing at the Hamburg train station injured 18 people. Police arrested a 39-year-old German woman. Authorities believe the attacker acted alone. The motive appears to be psychological rather than political. Meanwhile, the city of Bielefeld is gaining recognition. Its perceived stability is now highly valued. India and Pakistan maintain communication through military channels following a recent ceasefire agreement on May 10, aimed at de-escalation. Despite this, tensions persist, highlighted by the fatal shooting of a Pakistani man by Indian troops after he crossed the border into Gujarat state. Turning to the United States, President Trump is urging Apple to relocate iPhone production from India back to the USA. He has warned of a potential 25% tariff on Apple products should the company fail to comply with his demand to manufacture domestically. In India, the monsoon season has arrived early, marking the earliest arrival in 16 years. This is expected to alleviate a recent heat wave and boost prospects for abundant agricultural yields across the country. South Africa is currently focused on rescuing around 260 workers trapped in a gold mine after a hoist system malfunctioned. South Africa's police minister, Censorship, has criticized former U.S. President Donald Trump for allegedly distorting facts to support claims of genocide against white farmers. The son of one victim stated that Trump's video was misleading and reopened old wounds. Moreover, South Africa is downgrading Taiwan's representative office, signaling a strengthening of ties with Beijing. In regulatory news, a proposed change could allow companies like Starlink, owned by Elon Musk, to secure licenses without needing to sell shares to black South Africans. Turning to the United States, former President Donald Trump faces criticism from South Africa's police minister, Censorship, for allegedly misrepresenting facts related to the situation of white farmers in South Africa. Trump's video, which included footage of a burial site for white South African farmers, has been described as misleading, reopening wounds for the victims' families. Brazil mourns the loss of Sebastião Salgado, the acclaimed photographer, whose stark black and white images captured the essence of poverty, injustice, and the Amazon's beauty at the age of 81. Salgado, along with his wife, Lilia Wanik Salgado, established the Instituto Terra. In other news, the Marubo tribe from the Brazilian Amazon is suing the New York Times for defamation, demanding significant compensation. They allege the newspaper's coverage unfairly depicted them as addicted to technology and pornography after gaining internet access. Concerns are also being raised by former Brazilian officials regarding the nation's data collaboration with China. Marta Meyer, former research director at the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, expressed skepticism about China's commitment to transparent statistical practices. The United States has employed tariff negotiations as leverage against the European Union. Despite nearly $5 in daily transatlantic trade, EU officials still see the US as an ally in negotiations. A past threat from President Trump to impose a 25% tariff on phones not made in the US caused Apple shares to drop by about $70 billion. Shifting across the Atlantic, the United Kingdom has seen a rise in American immigration. Government data shows a surge in applications during the first 3 months of the year. Some attribute this trend to the current political climate in the United States. Bangladesh is currently navigating significant political turbulence, largely centered around interim leader Muhammad Yunus. The leader is struggling amidst pressures from politicians, the army, and various protest movements, leading to concerns about his potential resignation. High-ranking government officials have emphasized the critical role Yunus plays in ensuring a smooth and peaceful transition of power. Adding to these concerns, the UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, has seized almost £90 million in London property connected to individuals linked to the former Bangladeshi regime, underscoring ongoing efforts to address corruption and illicit financial flow. Romania's political scene is marked by the interplay of identity and electoral outcomes. Necuzadan's presidential win may have been secured, in part, through support from ethnic Hungarian and Moldovan voters. This underscores the importance of minority groups in national elections. Simultaneously, a cultural debate has ignited around the traditional Romanian blouse. Nationalists have embraced this garment, historically worn by villagers, particularly women. Liberals criticize this appropriation, seeing it as a misuse of a shared cultural symbol. Pakistan is grappling with a confluence of challenges, both on the global stage and within its own borders. The IMF clarified that a vote regarding financial support for Pakistan was not on the agenda. Meanwhile, India is reportedly considering advocating for Pakistan's return to the Financial Action Task Force's Fatih Grey list. Domestically, a stronger military response is underway in Balochistan after a school bus bombing in the southwest resulted in 8 fatalities. The Pakistani military is accusing India of backing the insurgents responsible for the bombing. Economically, Pakistan aims to attract foreign investment to exploit its reserves of copper and other critical minerals. The United States saw President Trump pushing for higher military expenditure. He also proposed altering how security contributions are calculated within NATO. Adding to trade tensions, Trump threatened a 50% tariff on goods from the European Union. He cited slow progress in trade negotiations as the reason. Apple was specifically mentioned concerning the potential tariff hike. Shifting to Ireland, the proposed 50% tariff on the EU could have a significant impact. Ireland has the most trade with the US among European nations. The tariff could consequently harm the US economy. This could slow global economic growth, with the damaging economic effects reaching beyond just Europe. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu leveled accusations against the leaders of France, Britain, and Canada. He claimed they were attempting to assist Hamas through recent threatening statements. Meanwhile, in France, the Cannes area experienced a power outage during the prestigious film festival. Quick action by festival organizers, who deployed backup power systems, ensured that the closing ceremony was able to proceed as planned despite the disruption. The underlying cause of the power failure is currently under investigation. Singapore is focused on adapting its economic strategies under Prime Minister Lawrence Wong's newly formed cabinet. The government aims to navigate the nation through an ever-changing global environment. Moreover, Faisal Ibrahim, the new Minister for Muslim Affairs, is taking a stronger position regarding the Gaza situation. Ibrahim has also defended former President Halima Yacob. Societal trends in Singapore indicate that high property costs and cultural expectations lead many young adults to live with their parents, making home ownership challenging for single individuals. New Zealand bid farewell to IT. A detector dog who retired after 8 years with the New Zealand Police Pacific Detector Dog program. Meanwhile, amateur fighter Dan Hangman Hooker is generating buzz in Auckland with his King of the Streets event, where 32 amateur fighters will vie for a $50,000 prize, an event that has attracted police scrutiny. In a heartwarming story, the Williams family, consisting of 6 members including a young child, completed a walk of the entire length of New Zealand, gaining significant public attention and occasionally being mistaken for the missing Maricopa family. Venezuela is currently gripped by heightened political tensions, as opposition leaders decry the recent arrest of politician Juan Pablo Guanipa and other individuals. These leaders view the arrests as a calculated effort to stifle dissent in advance of the weekend's vote. Guanipa's detention occurred amidst calls from his rightist party for voters to boycott the election, which follows 10 months after President Nicolas Maduro's controversial re-election. Oman recently facilitated a 5th round of discussions in Rome between Iranian and U.S. delegations, centering on Iran's nuclear program. The core of the negotiation involves Iran curbing its nuclear activities in return for the U.S. easing some economic sanctions. Though a conclusive agreement wasn't reached, both parties signaled an intent to pursue further talks, especially concerning uranium enrichment. Delegations acknowledged that they had achieved some minor gains as they worked to address the problems surrounding the nuclear program. Thailand is tightening its cannabis regulations after several incidents of tourists trying to smuggle the drug out of the country. The new rules require medical prescriptions for all cannabis sales. In a separate development, the San Francisco Asian Art Museum is coordinating the return of 4 bronze statues from Thailand's Prakan Chai hoard, marking a significant cultural repatriation. Shifting focus to Cambodia, 101 East is investigating the alleged political assassination of Lim Kim Ya, a former Cambodian opposition member of parliament, which purportedly occurred in Bangkok. Mexico City was disrupted Friday as protesting teachers blockaded a terminal at the international airport. The demonstration halted flights and inconvenienced thousands of passengers. Security personnel responded to regain control and reopen the affected terminal. El Salvador's Congress recently passed legislation designed to curb foreign interference and corruption, sparking controversy among human rights groups, political figures, and analysts. These critics argue that the law, championed by President Bukele, poses a potential threat to democratic principles. Vietnam has banned Telegram, citing the messaging app's failure to cooperate in curbing criminal activities on its platform. Meanwhile, a potential trade agreement between Vietnam and the United States is encountering obstacles. China's significant role in supplying fabrics to Vietnam is a key point of contention, even as Vietnam demonstrates a willingness to satisfy numerous demands previously made by the Trump administration. Cuba faces increased pressure as the United States prepares to levy further sanctions. The top U.S. diplomat in Havana confirmed this development. These impending measures follow recent sanctions targeting several Cuban judicial officials. Meanwhile, the cultural impact of Celia Cruz, the celebrated Queen of Salsa, resonates deeply, marking the 20th anniversary of her passing with widespread tributes honoring her enduring musical legacy. Myanmar is facing a potential humanitarian crisis, as the UNHCR estimates over 400 Rohingya may have perished in 2 separate shipwrecks off its coast. This could be the deadliest incident involving Rohingya refugees at sea this year. Shifting focus to Japan, a teenager from Nagoya has been apprehended by Aichi police. The arrest is linked to a fraud ring operating out of Myanmar, which targeted a man from my prefecture who was on a business trip to Oregon. Laos is set to receive a visit from Princess Aiko of Japan in November, marking her first official trip abroad. Further research has suggested Laos, along with southwest China, may be where the COVID-19 virus originated in bat populations, challenging the lab leak theory. The United States is currently weighing a potential suspension of habeas corpus, a fundamental legal right protecting against unlawful imprisonment, as the Trump administration seeks to overcome obstacles to its mass deportation initiative. During a recent Senate hearing, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was questioned about the administration's stance on this critical legal principle. Malaysia's Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, is standing by his decision to extend the tenure of anti-corruption head Azam Baki, emphasizing the team's commitment to probing high-profile figures. In related news, the swift ascent of Anwar Ibrahim's daughter, Nurul Izzah, in governmental roles, has sparked discontent among many young Malaysians. This group feels sidelined by ongoing political feuds and broken promises. Canada is experiencing economic headwinds as the Governor of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, identifies tariff uncertainty as a major deterrent to investment. This concern was voiced after a gathering of key economic figures in Alberta, highlighting the issue's prominence in Canadian economic planning. Vatican City saw victims of an abusive Catholic group praising Pope Leo XIV for his past support. Pope Leo XIV's actions regarding sex abuse cases, specifically during his tenure as an Augustinian superior and bishop in Peru, have come under close examination since his election on May 8. Diplomats are pushing for a new world order, citing tariff chaos caused by U.S. President Donald Trump. In the United States, a federal court blocked the Trump administration's attempt to deport 8 men to South Sudan, Myanmar, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, and Mexico. These men are currently in temporary Homeland Security custody in Djibouti. Moving to Poland, the presidential debate showcased contrasting views on the nation's ties with Ukraine and Europe, as Rafał Trzaskowski, representing a pro-EU coalition, faced off against Eurosceptic Karol Nawrocki. In Guatemala, a UN expert expressed concern about the increasing use of criminal law by the prosecutor's office against former prosecutors, judges, defense attorneys, journalists, and others. As Suriname gears up for elections, the country is expecting an influx of oil wealth, with plans to distribute some funds directly to citizens and invest in various sectors. There are increasing calls for Indonesia to strengthen its economy by increasing support for small businesses, which comprise over 60% of the nation's economic activity, following severe floods in southeastern Australia that led to 5 deaths and the flooding of over 10,000 properties. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced the start of cleanup efforts. In Libya, at least 7 Sudanese migrants were found dead in the desert after their vehicle broke down, leaving them stranded for days. Shifting to Serbia, thousands of protesters in the capital defied heavy rain to demonstrate against a government crackdown on universities. Meanwhile, in Beinset, Norway, a cargo ship crashed into a yard after a crew member fell asleep. The ship narrowly avoided hitting the house, and the resident was alerted by a neighbor. FIFA fined Albania's Football Federation for discriminatory offences during World Cup qualifying matches in March. In Greece, a monk was hospitalized after an altercation within a monastic community stemming from a long-standing religious dispute. Finally, Mexican photographer Graciela Iturbide has been awarded Spain's Princess of Asturias Prize for the Arts. And that's a wrap for today's news. because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.